All right, thanks, Colby. I'd like to introduce Kate Norman. Kate's a gun mega cod fisher. She loves all types of fishing since she was a child, but started specifically targeting Murray cod in the last 8 years or so. Despite growing up 30 minutes from Eildon, it's only recently that Kate really started to fish in the lake. She's made up for lost time though, has now spent countless hours chasing monster cod there. A little story, we were there one time when Kate was there and having a fish and caught zip, and learnt later that Kate caught 3 that morning. I hate you for that, Kate. But, no, I don't. I think it just shows how good she is, not that I was any good. Kate and her partner Brennan spent this winter chasing cod of 130 centimetre plus in Blowering Dam in a competition called the Murray Cod Megabucks. Brennan landed one 131.5 centimetres and Kate flogged him. I'm going to say flogged him at 135 centimetres, 116 pound. That's a little heavier than me. Do you believe that? So a big warm welcome to Kate Norman. Thank you.
Thank you very much for asking me to come along today to talk about something that I'm very passionate about, Murray cod, and I think everyone in the room feels the same. So I'm going to talk today mainly about Lake Eildon, and we're very lucky to have such an amazing fishery in Victoria. But first off, I thought we'd just start off with a little bit about me. So I grew up in Alexandra, which is really close to Lake Eildon, obviously, so I was very lucky with that. Grew up with a bit of a fishing family, mainly sort of saltwater fishing, going on family trips each year, but as I said, mainly to the beach. Lake Eildon at the time, when I was sort of growing up, was quite low. It wasn't at the level that it is at the moment. I do remember this kindergarten trip that we did go to Snobs Creek, and this was the first Murray cod that I ever saw. Down the bottom there, that was a while ago now. And I did actually end up at Snobs Creek Fish Hatchery during Year 10 to do work experience because at the time I did want to be a marine biologist. We spent a lot of time out on the lake during that 2-week period, but I do remember the lake was 17%, so it looks very, very different to what it does today. I thought at the time it was a perfect job. Plans sort of changed and ended up now I work as a veterinarian in northeast Victoria. One of my proudest moments as a vet would be actually doing surgery on a goldfish. It's probably one of the most stressful surgeries I've ever done in my life, but it all went really well, and the 5-year-old girl that owned the goldfish was very happy to have her fish back at the end of it. Down here on the bottom right, we've also got my daughter Heidi, so she's just about to turn 3 in January. She does love fishing just as much as I do. This photo here is her with her first trout. That was out at Lake Samble. We went out in the little tinny. She picked her own lure, a little pink Tassie Devil. We trolled around to catch that trout. In the meantime, she threw her hat in the water bottle in the water. She nearly jumped in the water, and then we hooked a trout. So she was very excited to wind that in, and I think she's sort of as hooked on fishing as I am. So Lake Eildon. Just a brief history from Lake Eildon. So it started off as the Sugarloaf Reservoir, which was completed in 1929. Then they decided that they needed more water, so they built the Eildon Dam Wall. That was completed in 1956. If you actually fish out near the main wall now and use your sonar, you can see the original Sugarloaf wall below the surface, obviously, which is pretty cool. It's a little bit creepy. The water just past the wall is about when the lake's full, it's probably about 70 metres deep. So really deep, but a really nice place and pretty cool to go and have a look at the original wall. So fishing at Eildon. As you can see by the map here, Eildon is a huge lake, and it's quite different just in the way that it's set out, that we've got a little bit of everything here. So you can fish up the northern end where we've got Bonnie Doon. The water generally is a little bit warmer up this end. You've got the big sloping banks, the big grassy hills, bit of structure, but it's quite different to that main basin in the middle near the wall. There's lots of access points at Eildon, which makes it fantastic, depending where you're coming from. If we're visiting family in Alexandra, we tend to visit or fish from the main wall or Jerusalem Creek, where if I'm coming from home, which is up Beechworth Way, we can get to the ramp near Bonnie Doon in about an hour and a half from our house. So depending where you live, there's always an access point close by. And the fishing is great all through the lake. I get the question a lot, sort of, where do you fish? Where are the big fish? They're everywhere. And as Colby said, they move as well. So there's not one part of the lake that just has big fish. I think, honestly, the whole lake fishes really well. There are access points sort of on this map that you can see with your ramps all the way from Bonnie Doon, Goffs Bay, Howqua, up Jamison, the big river arm, and then you can come around to the main Alliance ramp at the wall, Devil Cove, and also Jerusalem Creek as well. There's lots of options at Eildon for what you can do for your trips. There's lots of caravan parks that you can stay at. There are also free camping and also camping that you can book online in the national parks, which is really good. If you've got a group of people, a great option is to get a houseboat and drive around wherever you do want to go and fish and sort of camp up for the weekend. Another really good option, which you can see in the photo down the bottom here, are the botels out at Jerusalem Creek. We tend to like this because it's like a little unit on the water, which you don't drive. It's just sort of fixed. It's got power, it's got heating, so we can come and go as we please. When Heidi was growing up, she's 2. When she was much younger and less mobile, it was a really good option because we'd just take in turns who was staying in the boatel with her, and then one of us would go out and fish the night session, get back at about midnight, the other one would wake up, jump in the boat, and then do the morning session, and that's how we like to fish. So botels at Jerusalem Creek are a really nice, easy option. And this is just a typical morning at Eildon. How good is that? So that's up the Bonnie Doon end. All right, so why are Eildon cod so special? I'm probably biased because I love Lake Eildon and I like Eildon cod, but I do honestly think that they are some of the best Murray cod in Australia, and speaking to other anglers, I think a lot of people probably agree with me. Number one would be the size of them, and it's not just the length, it's the sheer weight and size of them. They're fat, they're healthy, they're big. You can see from the photos that a lot of anglers have put up today that they generally are really dark, deep-coloured, green, beautiful fish. It is a very healthy fishery with a large proportion of these Murray cod being over a metre. As Taylor spoke about earlier this morning, it is a stocked dam with huge numbers of Murray cod that's been going in there. And it is just getting better and better each year. And I think it's probably hit its prime a couple of years ago, but it's still going, which is fantastic. It's also, as Colby said earlier, it's a consistent fishery all year round. You do change your techniques and sort of what you're doing for different times of the year, depending how the lake is fishing, but it is still consistent. And being that open season all year, which is great, there's no closed season. As Colby and Lubin spoke about earlier on, I don't tend to target these fish during the warm months, especially not deep fish or anything like that. But the great thing about Lake Eildon is that there's so many other species that you can target during these months, and you can give them a bit of a break, especially for that really hot weather. So fishing for cod at Eildon. If anyone was here 2 years ago at the Codference, I spoke probably more about preparing yourself and how to sort of go about targeting cod at Eildon. Preparation to me is key. Everything for me it's the work-life fishing balance, and time is everything. I think that everyone in this room is probably similar, that we can be quite time poor at the moment. So the more organised you are, the more time you get to spend fishing. So try to do everything that you possibly can at home. So when I get out on the water, everything is ready to go. So leaders are tied on, lures are tied on. I've already got a plan of where I'm going to fish. Now I always have a couple of backup plans because especially Eildon, sometimes things don't go the way that they should. So you might get out and you want to fish a certain area or a certain bay. There may be 10 houseboats parked up in that bay. There may be lots of boats around. There may be, it might be windy, that section of the lake. The great thing about Eildon is that it is a huge lake, so you can move, you can find your own water. I tend to just try and find somewhere without any other boats, without any boat traffic, and especially not any other houseboats and things like that around. Use your maps. You can use your maps on your sounder if you're using them. Garmin's got Navionics, which is really great. I tend to just use Google Maps as well. So Brendan and I, if we do some sessions, we tend to get home afterwards and say, where did you fish? What did you find? And then we'll get out Google Maps and pick areas that have sort of fished really well. The other thing with Eildon is it does tend to fish in patterns. So if you find that the last few fish that you've caught are on big grassy banks or rocky points, I'll then go through Google Maps and find areas that I haven't fished before but are similar type of areas to where I last caught fish. That tends to work with the patterns that go through during the year. And yeah, as I said, there's great apps out there that you can use. The Windy app as well can be quite accurate to how the wind is going at Eildon. Saying that, I wouldn't ever not go out fishing because of what the wind is doing, but if you've got the option of a couple of nights and you can try and pick the night with less wind. So a bit more about preparation. As we've spoken about earlier, Murray cod are brutal. They can be quite tough on gear, so make sure you are checking your lures, you are upgrading trebles if you need. The other little tip that I'd have is if you do catch a cod, doesn't matter how big it is, because of the way that their mouth and their raspy plate is built, they can be quite tough even on leaders, so don't get complacent. A lot of the time you'll get one chance at these big fish, so if you have caught even a smaller cod earlier and then you get a big fish that hits your lure but your leader's a little bit rasped up and it ends up breaking, that's a pretty big heartbreaking moment. So every time I catch a fish, I cut the leader, tie on a new knot just to make it nice and fresh, and then you're less likely to lose a fish because of it. Make sure you do have a big net, and if you're targeting these big fish, prepare to catch a big fish. So have your big net. Once I've hooked it, I'll actually sit it in the net. As Colby said too, get the hooks out as soon as possible. You don't want that fish rolling in the net with the hooks getting caught. So get your lures out and then just have the fish sort of sitting there recovering in the net. I then have everything ready, wet your brag mat down, everything should be nice and wet on the deck, and then lift the cod into the boat. I've got a camera or my phone set up on a little tripod, and I actually set the self-timer while the fish is in the net. So the timer's going off, lift the fish up, get a few photos, whack it on the brag mat, photos of that if that's what I need, and then back in the water. So those fish really aren't out of the water for a long period at all, and that makes a huge difference as well. Also, care when we're holding these fish, making sure we are supporting the belly at all times as well, and using a glove, making sure you've got the right tools in the boat as well. So long nose pliers are fantastic, and also cutters as well if you do need to cut those trebles off those hooks. So I'm not going to go into gear in a huge amount of detail. If anyone has any questions about what gear that I use, feel free to message me, come up to me later, and I'm happy to have a bit of a chat to you about it though. But basically you want to be using a combination that you're comfortable using. I have a lot of friends that fish and they use spin reels and they want to know, do I have to use a bait caster? No, you don't have to. I do, and I enjoy using a bait caster, and I find that it works well for the fishing that I do, but you don't have to. Use whatever you're comfortable with. Normally you're looking at sort of that 5 to 10 kilo rod and a 4,000 spin reel if you're going to use a spin reel, or a 200 to 300 size bait caster. In Eildon, I use 50-pound braid and leader, and I find that that works really well for me. There's pros and cons with different types of line and strength, so just pick something that you're confident with. So lure choice at Eildon. Most of the fishing that I do at Eildon is during winter, targeting those big fish, and it is nighttime. Generally, the bigger the better. Soft plastics are always a bit of a go-to at Lake Eildon, 10 inches or bigger. Also your large swim baits and your spinner baits. Assist hooks can be really good on your soft plastics because a lot of these big fish will actually come up underneath the lure and hit it sort of belly up. So having that assist hook hanging down there can make a big difference and can be quite important. The other thing is that Eildon, the weather obviously can be quite unpredictable, so be warm. If you're not warm, you're going to be miserable. If you're miserable, you're not going to catch fish. So make sure you do invest in some really good warm weather gear, and if it is forecasted to rain, make sure you've got a good rain jacket in the boat as well. One thing that we always have in our boat, we must spend hundreds of dollars on them, but they're hand warmers. Hand warmers are fantastic just to pop into your pockets. The other thing that I've been using recently is the bigger style, the body warmers. I used to think that they were a bit silly, but they're not. They're fantastic. Get body warmers, pull the back covering off them, and you stick them on the top layering, the under layering of your clothes. So if you've got a thermal top on, you can put a couple of body warmers on the front and the back, and keeping your core warm, you'll be able to fish much longer and be much more comfortable. So live technology. I thought I'd just bring it up quickly, just have a bit of a chat. As I said earlier, you're more than welcome to come up to me afterwards and have a talk to me about it if you had any other questions. It is obviously a bit of a hot topic at the moment, and it's one of those things that there will also always be something new. There will also be some sort of advancement in technology, but at the moment it is live sonar. In my boat I use Garmin, and we've got 8400 series set up with an LVS 34 transducer. I'm happy to fish without it. I've learnt a lot using it, and the type of fishing that I do at the moment, which is mainly at night for quite short periods of time, I find that it works really well being able to use it. So, reasons why I use it. I think I've been fishing for cod for about 8 years or so now. Using live technology, I've been able to learn a lot about how the fish are reacting to different types of baits, different types of lures, but also for my fishing skill as well. You sort of, the whole time you're trying to visualise what your lure looks like under the water, and you don't always get an accurate visualisation of what that is. With live technology, I can see exactly how quickly my lure is falling, how close I am to that snag, and it is just increasing that time in that strike zone, which I've been able to improve over the years using it. It's also, I find at night, as I said, a lot of fishing that I do is at night. So we do have a head torch on, but I don't fish with lights other than nav lights on. So using live sonar, I can see everything that's underneath the water and also what's coming up out of the water without turning torches on and things like that. So I can safely navigate all the way around a bay or structure just using live sonar and seeing what's in front of the boat at the time. So when you're out there on the water, try to learn something from every session that you do. If you've got other friends that are out there and they are fishing at the same time, share stories. We've had a few trips where we've got houseboats and we've had sort of 4 or 5 boats on the water at a time. After we've all fished a morning session, we'll all come together, have some breakfast, have a bit of a chat, try to spread out over the lake. So we'll have certain boats going north, south, and then we'll find out what's sort of working. Doing that and then sharing that knowledge is a really quick way of learning how a lake is fishing at a certain time, because Eildon is one of those lakes that just when you think that you've figured it out and worked out how to fish it, it will change and it will be a little bit different. So having that combined knowledge is always a good thing. And as the others have said earlier, just be persistent, put the time in out on the water. Changing lure type is important. So if you are fishing with a certain type of lure and you're not having a lot of success, it is always good to try and mix it up a little bit. Saying that, don't be the angler that's chopping a lure off every 2 minutes because they're not catching fish. Be persistent with a certain type, but if something's not working, don't be frightened to sort of mix it up. And if you do have 2 people in the boat, having 2 complete opposite types of lures is always a good thing too, just to see what's working for that time of day or night. Eildon, as I said earlier as well, the fish they work in patterns. So once you find something that's working at a certain time of year, it's always great if you can fish a few nights sort of consecutively, because when you work out what's working at that point in time, it tends to then work for a few nights. You go back a month later and it's all changed, but work out the pattern of what's working and then sort of go with that. So I was lucky enough only a few weeks ago to get back out to Eildon with some friends that love fishing. They normally fish for cod mainly in the Ovens and the King River, but they'd never caught cod at Eildon. So I took these girlfriends out. We stayed at the Botels, which was a lot of fun. During the day, we targeted trout, yellow belly, redfin, and had a lot of success. There was a heap of boat traffic on the water. It was quite a warm day, so we just focused on those other species during the middle of the day, and then at night we got out and chased some cod. We managed to get a couple in the boat, which was great fun, and seeing the look on the girls' faces when they got to sort of hold and catch those cod is something that I'll never forget. Thank you very much for listening, and I hope that you've enjoyed the presentation just on Lake Eildon cod. If any of you do have a chance to get out to Lake Eildon to chase these cod, please do it. They are amazing, and we're very lucky to have such an amazing cod fishery in Victoria, and it will continue to get better and better.